are you curious about what pushing is really like? We see so many TV and movie interpretations of pushing, and then you probably have heard from friends and family, and those don't really match. Those don't go together. And there's a lot of myths out there about pushing. We're going to break those down today. And I'm just going to jump in right now with my number one myth about pushing. And that is that you have to push in stirrups. If you don't know what a stirrup is, it's not, well, in this case, it's not what you use with a horse. Those are called stirrups also. But this is the device that you put your legs in, usually during a pap smear. And you might see this in videos, and sometimes it's still used during birth, but this is not required for childbirth and pushing. And I also want to maybe talk a little bit about why it matters. When you are in that position, it doesn't usually bring back good feelings. A lot of people have negative associations with stirrups, and it also doesn't sort of give you that power behind pushing. You're a little bit more passive pushing. So another option would be to hold your own legs if you are pushing on your back, which leads me to the second myth, and that is that you have to push on your back. So first of all, stirrups do not have to be the way to go. And just before I move on to pushing on your back, if you are interested in skipping the stirrups when you're pushing, if you're like, no, I know, I agree with you, Alice, I don't want to have my legs in stirrups when I push, tell your doctor and nurse right before pushing starts. Say, hey, just to let you know, I don't want you to recommend stirrups. Just so they have that information at a really good time, so they don't forget it if you tell them when you get into the hospital. Okay, now pushing on your back. Oh my gosh, we see this all the time, TV and movies, people on your back or in a sort of a semi-seated position. Now, you definitely can push in that way, but there are a lot of other options. So if you have an epidural and you have absolutely no feeling in your legs at all, which is less common, you might have only two options for pushing. That would be on your back and on your side, but you do have the option of pushing on your side, and it's an excellent option to push in. So this myth of only being able to push on your back, it's just not true. And what I would say is if you are interested in pushing in different positions, definitely, again, talk to your care team, especially right before pushing, and say, I'm really interested in different positions. Now, if you're wondering, like, I don't really care, like, why don't I just push on my back? Sure, that's fine. But do know that changing positions can help speed up the pushing process, and even pushing on side lying can help reduce the incidence of tearing. So if you're interested in both of those things, reducing the likelihood of tearing and the likelihood of needing an instrumental delivery, like with forceps or a vacuum, and if you're hoping to kind of speed up pushing, then you might want to talk to your care provider about not pushing solely on your back, okay? So speaking of pushing with an epidural, a big myth is that if you have an epidural, you won't feel any kind of pain or discomfort when you're pushing. Sometimes people even say, my epidural wore off because I felt so much pressure when I was pushing. That's not actually your epidural wearing off. That's just how an epidural works. It is very common that the epidural only covers and helps prevent that contraction pain, lessen the contraction pain. It often cannot take away the rectal pressure that you feel with pushing. And many people describe it as the most rectal pressure and the most intense rectal pressure that they have ever felt or could imagine in their entire life, almost like a bowling ball being pushed from their butt. And this is something that a lot of times the epidural just can't take away. So if you have an idea or believe the myth that the epidural will allow you to experience no painful sensation or no discomfort during labor, it is definitely something that can be uncomfortable. So it's good to know some coping mechanisms. I always recommend a childbirth class. Just if you experience any kind of discomfort, you have some ways to cope, especially with breathing. And I'm going to put a link down below to a childbirth class that I teach if you're interested in joining that. Okay, The next myth that we see all the time, especially in TV and movies, is that once you start pushing, that you push continuously until the baby comes out. And sometimes you hear people say, I push for 2 hours or 3 hours, and that's probably very true. But what we don't talk about or see is that you only push during the contractions. So just like in labor, you're gonna have a contraction and then you're gonna have a rest. You're gonna have a contraction and then a rest. And with pushing, you only push during the contraction. The rest time, you're resting. So they never show that part on TV. They never show that you push for a minute and then you have maybe 3 minutes in between to catch your breath, have a sip of water, put a washcloth on your head, those kind of things, and then start pushing again. So there are breaks. It's not just like time to push and we're gonna push continuously for the next 2 hours. I know when I found that out, I was so relieved. I couldn't imagine continuously pushing for that amount of time. So there are still breaks, even in the pushing phase. Before we jump to the final myth, I want to show a clip from a birth vlog, Brianna K. Her birth video has 15 million views on YouTube. And this really short clip, you will see the busting of 4 myths. So you'll see her pushing in positions that are not on her back. She doesn't use stirrups. She doesn't push continuously. And she also feels something going on, and yet she does have an epidural. So check this out real quick. If you're curious about how her birth turned out, I'll put a link at the end of the video. Also, please note that she had a baby that was in the sunny side up position, OP, so it is harder to push a baby in that position. I'll also put a link down below to a video about the position of a baby and what OP means, just in case you're curious about that. Okay, this final one is sometimes disappointing to partners. When I work with my childbirth education students and we talk this through, sometimes I get some partners that are a little bit disappointed. And that is, if you are the partner that you want to be up by the head, you don't want to be down below, you want to see nothing, it's likely that you're not going to be able to do that. The way that birth goes these days, in most cases, you will see something happening with your partner. Unless your eyes never divert from her face, which is hard to do, you will likely see something. And this idea that we still see all the time in pictures of a drape covering over your legs, that is not the standard anymore. I don't even remember if I've ever seen anybody have their legs draped for a birth. It's just not likely. The other thing is, you will often have care providers that are encouraging partners. You'll have the nurse say, Dad, take a look, I see the head, or the doctor or midwife, whoever's catching, to say something like, look, or I see your baby. And so it is hard for partners not to look in that case. It's exciting. They also might feel a little bit pressured or that they need to do that. So it is likely that they're going to see something. So let your partner know, if you have a partner in this case that is wanting to stay up by your head, that if they definitely don't want to see anything, that you might want to talk to your care team about just not encouraging your partner to look and encouraging your partner to, keep focused on your face. But it's likely they're going to see something. They don't have to walk all the way down and see full crotch shot, but it's just how it is. So 5 myths. I hope that you feel more ready after you see these myths. Now, I picked my top videos on this channel for preparing for birth, and I'm going to include a link to that playlist right here. I think you'll find it very helpful. And also, if you like this video, I always appreciate a like, and that way YouTube knows to show this video to more people like you. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.